Very happy to have Senator Johnson here. I think you've all heard and gotten a very good feel for there really is just tremendous bipartisan support for the work of whistleblowers and the work of it across party lines. I would say, though, as they asked me to introduce Senator Johnson as a fellow Republican, I would tell you, though, it really did make me blanch, though, because my being from Nebraska and him being from Wisconsin, where Wisconsin has not been that kind to Nebraska in football lately, it actually gave me more pause than anything regarding party lines. But I am thrilled to have Senator Johnson here. Senator Johnson, while new to the Senate, has quickly made a very strong mark in the Senate supporting whistleblowers. He's chairman of the Senate Committee on Homeland Security and Governmental Affairs. As chairman, Senator Johnson has fought for greater whistleblower protections for federal employees. He has convened hearings in Washington, D.C. and in Wisconsin examining the challenges that many federal whistleblowers face when they report wrongdoing. Senator Johnson has also held hearings to discuss how offices of Inspector General, particularly those without permanent leadership, lack independence. Boy, that's the truth. Though his committee, Senator Johnson, has advanced bipartisan legislation to improve the independence and transparency of inspectors general. Tremendous that you're doing that work, Senator, so very important. Senator Johnson has set up an email address so that federal employees have the ability to anonymously report waste, fraud, and abuse to Congress. That email address is whistleblower@ronjohnson, all one word, ronjohnson.senate.gov. Senator Johnson is a founding member of the Senate Whistleblower Caucus. Please join me in welcoming Senator Johnson. Thank you, Senator.
Well, thank you, Dean, and thank you all for your involvement in what is a pretty important effort. And Dean, I appreciate you mentioning that website we set up, whistleblower@ronjohnson.senate.gov. One of the reasons we did that is, one of the perspectives I came up with immediately is how oftentimes whistleblowers go to the press because in the media they have far greater protections than when they come before Congress, which surprised me and which I think is completely wrong, but it's just a fact. The fact that the media holds confidences better and offers greater protection is a real problem, and it's a problem that we absolutely need to address. Now, I come from the private sector. I ran a manufacturing business for 30-some years. And, one of the problems when you're at the top of an organization, it's sometimes hard to get the information of what's really happening down there, for example, on the shop floor. You've got layer upon layer of management underneath you. I had a pretty lean organization, really only had about one layer of management, and I still had a problem sometimes really understanding what was going on the shop floor. So when I came to government and I realized, even though it's interesting, you've got your little booklet here, and really, let's face it, the first resolution protecting whistleblowers was passed in 1778, and then you see the retaliation, how prevalent it is within government. I was shocked. Because in the private sector, when somebody from the shop floor had the courage, and let's face it, it takes courage to bypass a manager, bypass a layer of management, and go to the top, I would want to pin a medal on those individuals in the private sector. And I thought with all this, and with all this protection laid in law, at least for the last couple decades, I would have thought whistleblowers would have been really protected here in the federal government, but I found out that's not true. Now, my own little journey here, my own knowledge of how untrue that is, started really with the events in Cartagena. The prostitution scandal, and we held a hearing in Homeland Security, and we had the director of the Secret Service in front of us, and I'm sorry, the story he told wasn't believable. And so as the ranking member of a subcommittee who had that under our jurisdiction, we started doing our own investigation, exactly what was happening. Of course, we had an inspector general that was also doing an investigation. But let's face it, we all want the Secret Service to be held up as a highly credible organization, and I think those men and women who really are willing to lay their life on the line to protect the president and other high government officials, we respect them. And so we just didn't want to believe that there was a cultural problem in the Secret Service. This isn't why I came here, to dig into and kind of root out the cultural problem within the Secret Service, but it was my responsibility, so we carried out that responsibility. So I sent a staff member to go and listen and read the initial Inspector General's report on the events of Cartagena. And we found out some pretty troubling things. Then, oh, I don't know, about 3 or 4 or 5 months later, that Inspector General's report was made public. And there were some discrepancies. There were things that had been removed. And we started scratching our heads, well, now why would that be? Now, an Inspector General, I mean, that is the office within any department or any agency that needs to be completely independent, needs to be completely transparent. The only way you're going to reform government, make sure that it's efficient, effective, and accountable, is the public has to know. We have to create public pressure to make government work better. But when you have an Inspector General's office that is doctoring a report before it's made public, that's a real problem. And then what is even a bigger problem, as we continued our investigation, we realized that those individuals within the Inspector General's office of the Department of Homeland Security, under Charles Edwards, the ones that resisted changing the report, the ones that were coming forward and whistleblowing to our office, were retaliated against. And I realized, boy, this isn't the way this should go. This is a real problem. Let's run the clock a little further forward. We saw the events in Arizona with the VA healthcare system. And again, that story was broken not by the Office of the Inspector General, but by the media. We had a similar story broken by the media in my own home state of Wisconsin at the Toma VA. Again, not broken by the Office of the Inspector General, not with a published report by what should be an independent watchdog, but by the news media, because the news media was made aware of it by courageous whistleblowers that felt really more comfortable going to the news media to get the attention. Now, what happened in Toma, Wisconsin is dating back to as far as 2004. That facility was called Candyland. A particular doctor who became pretty high up in that organization was referred to as Candy Man. And a number of the finest among us, our veterans, died of opiate overprescription doses. That story was broken, I think, somewhere like January 8th of 2015. That's when I first heard about the problems in the Toma VA. But on January 12th, a veteran, Thomas Bayer, was taken to the Toma Healthcare Center by his daughter, Candace Dellis, from Marshfield, Wisconsin. You may not understand it, but Marshfield, Wisconsin is kind of like Rochester, Minnesota. It's got excellent healthcare facilities. He was taken there with stroke-like symptoms. He waited 2 to 3 hours, suffered a couple strokes, died 2 days later at Gunderson Lutheran Hospitals in La Crosse. I will never forget the phone call I made to Candace Dellis shortly after I found out about that problem and that tragedy, which said, you know, Ron, I never would have taken my father to the Toma healthcare facility had I known the problems. So what we're talking about here with whistleblowers, people that have the courage to step forward, isn't some theoretical issue of efficient government and effective government, accountable government. We're talking about people's lives. We're talking about life and death situations. And we need to understand that, and we need to embrace that. And we need to offer every protection available to those men and women that have the courage to go above their immediate boss, go above their layers of management, put their careers on the line. And let's face it, we had a hearing on whistleblowers, and it's just unbelievable. The individuals that have had that courage, that have rooted out waste, that have saved the government billions of dollars, and their reward is to have their careers ruined, to be given a little office in the basement without a desk, and they have to construct a desk out of cardboard. That's been their reward. We can't tolerate that. And so I am happy to join Senators Wyden, Senator Grassley, and everybody else that's willing to join this whistleblower caucus to make sure, to guarantee the protection of those individuals, those men and women that have the courage to come forward. It's the least we can do. So thank you all for your involvement and your